Welcome to an update on generative AI. My name is Johannes Schneider and I will tell you what happened in generative AI in the last 12 months. At least some of those things that happened. So we look at new applications and models such as OpenAI Sora, Google's Gemini Pro 1.5, Anthropic Claude 3 and GPT-4 Store. Then we'll also discover what happened with respect to hallucinations and ethical issues in the last year. So let's get going and look at one of the most famous text-to-image models, Midjourney. So here you can see on top a prompt that has been used to generate the very same images in version V1 from February 2002, in version V5 from March 23, and from version V6 from last December. I'll give you about 5 to 10 seconds to figure out what's the difference between V5 and V6, in particular which one is better considering the prompt. Alright, so if you carefully read the prompt, you could see, well, here we have full body. That's certainly the case on the right hand side, not so much in the middle. Then if you look at the Victorian genre painting, well, that's also probably more the case on the right hand side than in the middle, though I'm not that much of an expert in art. Also, if you look at the light, you see that it comes from the back, but we have reflections in the front. So this is also a no-go for version V5, but it's somewhat better at V6. So what we see overall, we have better quality and we have better prompt understanding for the newer version. So clearly a step forward in the last couple of months. The same thing holds not just for Midjourney, but also if you look at GPT-4, where we have kind of also the capability to understand images and turn them into text, ask any type of questions. This was announced a year ago in the GPT-4 version, but it became only available in the last 12 months. Similar, we have seen that DALL-E 2 was updated to DALL-E 3, and now we have also significantly better image generation than about a year ago. Well, what really is astonishing is improvements in video to text. So if you look at Google's Gemini Pro 1.5, which was released barely a month ago, we see that we can upload 1 hour of video, 11 hours of audio, more than 30,000 lines of code, and more than 700,000 words in a single prompt. So this is an insanely large context window, about 10 times the size of that of GPT-4. Now, it's not so clear how much you really benefit from such a large context window if quality goes down a little bit, if you add too much content that is not relevant for the query, but still pretty much impressive. So let's look at it in action. And I want to thank this guy here below, Simon Wilson, from which I took the video. So what we look at is at the bookshelf, and a movie of it. And the task is to recognize the books, so kind of to turn unstructured data into structured data. So we want to have a JSON format with title and authors. So let's look at the video. So the video was pretty fast, not easy to recognize all the books, and in fact Gemini also failed to recognize everything, but it did recognize a bunch of books. For those interested in the detail, I recommend looking at Simon Wilson's page, who discusses this in more depth. So really big step forward with Google's Gemini, but probably even more astonishing is OpenAI Sora, where you can put in a textual prompt and then you get the video, right? So this is really mind-blowing if you look at the demo right here. So here we have the story of a cat waking up its sleeping owner, blah, blah, blah. Let's look how it looks. So really amazing what we have seen here. You can really become a video creator. Just write your story and you get the video. Now maybe those of you who watch carefully might have seen a few issues. So you see it here, you know, for the cat. There's also some issues with respect to the arm for those of you who look carefully, but overall still very, very good videos. Then many of you might not be into such creative jobs, but you probably earn a little bit more money than those who deal with video. So I hope all of you made big profits last year or last month. And what you might want to do, you might highlight those profits that kind of gave you and were exceptional, maybe those above 2000. And what you can do now with Microsoft CoPilot, so the Office integration of large language models, is just state it as a text prompt and boom, you have it here. So what CoPilot does, it really facilitates interaction with Excel. You don't need to remember all those commands, look for them in the menu, just state what you want and you get it done. So you can also do some classical work, you know, you have your order table or your table of transactions and you say, well, I want the column total price, and you get a suggestion and you just press insert column and you have it there. So what CoPilot really does, it gives you easy access to Excel function using AI functionality. It does in fact much more. You can also generate visualization and so on. Currently it's still fairly slow, but it might be worth a shot. Then if you look at text to text, well, we still have the GPT-4. GPT-4 is the dominating factor. Now, if compared to a year ago, GPT-4 had a few innovations. So it got internet access, it got faster with GPT-4 Turbo, and also there was an update of training data. GPT-5 is being worked on as officially announced by OpenAI, but the release date is not yet set. One really nice thing that was announced and also came into action in the beginning of this year is the GPT-4 store. So if you want to build and deploy your own customized GPT-4, it's really easy now. So you just pretty much click create, write instruction, upload a knowledge base and press deploy. That's all there is, and you have your own GPT-4. So to kind of quickly demonstrate this, I uploaded 3 PDF files here. I wrote the quick instruction that these PDF files, which are some papers, some academic publications that I did, and what the GPT-4 model should do, it should answer questions to the given papers to my kids, age 1, 4, and 7, and they might ask things like, is that helping to make the world a better place? Yeah, and of course, the GPT-4 model says yes, because I'm working on AI, but children are skeptical, so they might say, I don't believe you, provide evidence. And what you see here is what GPT-4 does, it searches in the documents that you have uploaded. So it can do a few more things like doing some actions, also generate images and so on. So that's really nice for those of you who are not much into programming and want to deploy models. For those of you who say, well, screw OpenAI, I want to do my own thing, there's a bunch of large models aside from GPT-4. So GPT-4 is kind of still the dominating model, but we recently saw that Mistral announced a new large model. Also, Anthropic announced the Claude 3, and they claim to be better than GPT-4. I will discuss this in a second. With respect to open source model, we still have that 1170B is one of the leading ones aside from the large Falcon models. Well, whether this is really true with respect to real world performance, that's another question, right? Those benchmarks are helpful, but not necessarily for your applications. Then for small models, we saw a release of Google's Gemma just about a month ago, and last year already we saw a release of Mistral 7B and 13B. There's daily new model variants, so keep your eyes open. Now you might say, well, how far away is the best open source model to the commercial one, in particular if you want to launch an on-premise model? Well, this is a very difficult question, therefore I don't dare to answer it, but I referred to a colleague of mine who I recently met and gave a talk, and he kind of said, well, there's about a 1.5 to 2.5 year gap between open source and commercial model if we look back the last 3 years and do some kind of interpolation. Now let's look at Claude 3, which was released just a couple of days ago, so in March 2024. If you look at their benchmarks, they kind of claim that they're doing pretty good. So if you look at Claude 3 Opus, right, so they claim here 87% almost compared to GPT-4, 86.4. So overall, they seem to be better in GPT-4, at least a little bit on most benchmarks. Is this really true? Well, maybe it was, because they kind of cheated their way a little bit. So they compared against an old version of GPT-4 from last year. The newer GPT-4 Turbo that is in use today is actually still quite a bit ahead of Anthropic's Claude 3. So thanks for Tolga Bilsh for discovering this and writing a tweet. Now then, many of you might say, well, how about ethical issues and hallucinations? Have we solved this? Well, not yet. So there was a recent case in the newspapers where Air Canada actually lost a lawsuit against a customer who won against Air Canada due to an hallucination of the model. So what happened is that the model kind of gave wrong information to the customer, which was against the airline policy, and Air Canada had to pay a couple of $100 in damages and court fees, and probably another $50K for lawyers. So ethical issues still exist. There has been surprisingly just a few weeks ago an announcement that Google's Gemini has trouble drawing white people. So far, discrimination was always against minority. So this is one of the few cases where there's some discrimination against the majority with respect to representation in the training data. Well, as I said, we still have hallucination and reasoning errors as witnessed by Air Canada's case. But if we look at it more holistically, I would dare to say that these things improved also thanks to a number of techniques that were deployed from researchers. So here's just a very short example of what the state of the art is with respect to negotiation. So in one of our own studies, we did a small test on and let people negotiate the price of a used car against ChatGPT 3.5. We didn't do any fine-tuning, nothing, just out of the box to see if such models can be used for customer-facing applications that are competitive. So the price was estimated between 10 and 5K, and what we saw is that there were customers that kind of reached reasonable goals, so kind of like in the middle, but also some they were able to cross the minimum value boundary, although we instructed ChatGPT to negotiate hard. And there were even those smart asses who kind of walked away from the sales with the car for free. Some of those guys even went to the car dealer, got the car, and additionally some money. So that's really amazing, and we see that, well, maybe after all, AI is not so smart yet in negotiations. So just to summarize, we have seen significant progress in last year, in particular with respect to video and images. We have also seen quite some integration with respect to external tools. So maybe you don't notice, but many models now implicitly use the internet when answering your prompts. There might also be a code interpreter involved when you use, for example, GPT-4. The basic problems still remain. We still see hallucinations. We still have ethical issues, but overall I dare to say they improved. If you look a step forward, and you might wonder how long will AI improve at that pace, but it's kind of hard to say. There's people who say we run out of data because pretty much everyone tries to train on all the data that is available. Also, compute could be an issue, though probably more in the short run as computational power always increases. So feel free to get in touch if you wish to do a project. Also, feel free to check out some of my research. Thanks a lot.